By now, most of the residents had left. This is item 15 on the agenda, Kelli Villis's request for a hearing per ordinance 8.1.5, length of grasses. Ms. Villis pleads her case and explains that the weed commissioner came at the request of Chairman Marek after a citizen complaint. The weed commissioner passed her yard and property with flying colors. The weed commissioner shared that information with the chairman in an email, but a cut notice was sent anyway. After much discussion that Macy felt was immaterial to her case, the board voted to rescind the cut notice.
On to 15, Kelli Villis request for hearing for ordinance 8-1-5 regarding length of grass. This is for discussion and possible action by the town board. Good evening.
Hi. I have some handout materials for everybody. Copy to be entered into the town records. Also have some pictures.
We have to make copies of them. You can make photocopies of them, but you know, if we have the original, I just don't like to have not public records that are handed out at the public meetings.
So I'll pass them around and then we'll stop them.
Okay, my husband Sparrow and I are, I can start?
Sure.
Okay, my husband Sparrow and I are here tonight because a neighbor on the next block filed a complaint about our landscaping with the town chairman, John Marek. I received a call from Chairman Marek sometime in September in which he warned me that this neighbor may be filing a complaint about our landscaping. Mr. Marek also said that if a complaint were to be filed, we just needed to point out that we have a prairie landscape. On October 17th, the town weed commissioner, Mike Borkhart, inspected our property and provided a written letter stating that our property is, quote, well maintained and, quote, no action required. I'd like to read that letter, and it's part of the package I'm submitting. Okay, the date of the letter is October 18th, addressed to me and my husband, from Mike Borkhart. Due to a phone call Chairman John Marek received, Mr. Marek requested me to investigate a complaint he received in regard to weeds, grass under property. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, 10/17, I met with you on your property to inspect for any problems. Based on our conversation, inspection of your property, and the condition of the properties to your north and east, I found your property to be well maintained and no action required on your part at this time. The rest of it probably doesn't need to be read, but that was the gist of it, is that he found the property to be well maintained and no action required.
We could probably cut right to the chase and make this easier on you. What are you requesting of the board?
Well, I've put a great deal of time into preparing for this, and this has been a very big burden on my family. So I want to make sure that we have I really need to go through this, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Or I'm not going to do justice to, well, you know, the situation here.
But your situation might be very easy for the board to make a decision if you just tell us what your request is.
I'm just requesting that the board allow homeowners to have prairie landscaping, natural landscaping, blended landscaping, and to rescind the cut notice that we were given.
Specific to your property?
Specific to our property, yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to that effect?
I don't know that you can do that. Do you have a code or an ordinance?
We do.
Yep.
Okay. What
8.1.5.
That's in the packet.
Yes.
It's in the packet.
Oh, it's the, I'm sorry, the code is on, the code references on the,
Yeah, just a minute, let's look up the code. I had it, and then I closed it, I'm
We
sorry.
did this a couple months ago, the
Right.
gentleman that came in.
It'll just take me, it'll take me less than that.
815.
815. So it allows the board to hear her request and then give an answer, and I have to write it for her. Just some-
Well, then in all due respect, she really should present her case, because we have to have a basis in the record as to why we're making this determination. You know what I mean? In order to distinguish it from every other person who has long grass, she's absolutely right, she's gotta make her record.
Let's do it.
I think she's right, you know?
Okay,
Go ahead.
proceed, okay. Okay, so I submitted that for town record. I'd also like to submit into town record an email sent from the weed commissioner to the town chairman dated October 18th summarizing the inspection of our property. I'll read excerpts from this instead of the whole thing. It's dated Thursday, October 18th to John Marek from Mike Borkert. On Wednesday, 10/17/18, 12:25 p.m., you called me requesting that I, Mike Borkert, Town of Waukesha Weed Commissioner, investigate a complaint you received about a property on Big Bend Road, north of Turner's Pike West, that was reported to you having noxious weeds and uncut grass. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit, go down to the next pertinent part. Mike says, I inspected the property with Kelli Villis and found it to be well maintained. The Villis property is 1.24 acres with a lot of trees and shrubbery. I'm going to skip down. Based on my inspection of the Villis property, I found that at this time the property is well maintained. The property owners are diligent in controlling weeds on their property and cutting the ditch area on Big Bend Road adjacent to their property. At this time, I see no need for any action required on the property owned by the Villises, and the complaint you received is invalid. So I'd like to emphasize that he found the complaint to be invalid. On November 27th, I received a call from Chairman Marek informing me that the complaining neighbor was, quote, putting a lot of pressure on me, and that he was issuing a 5-day cut notice to us, and that I would be hearing from the weed commissioner. I informed him that we already had the weed commissioners inspect our property, and that he had found our property to be, quote, well maintained, and, quote, no action required. I stated to Chairman Marek that I had this in writing. Chairman Marek said he was not aware of that. I asked him why he had issued a cut notice and why he had overruled his weed commissioner's decision. He replied, I can't even remember what your property looked like.
Ma'am, I'm gonna ask you not to portray what I said, because I'm disagreeing with those statements. So I'm gonna ask that you refrain from making statements about what I said, please.
I'm just presenting facts.
Ma'am, I'm gonna ask you not to present that I made some comment, because I disagree with you, okay?
Respectfully, I don't see what I'm doing wrong if I'm presenting facts.
Go ahead.
Okay. On December 1st, I received another letter from the weed commissioner and a 5-day cut notice delivered via certified mail. Delivered certified mail. I'd like to read that letter and read the cut notice, submit vote for town record. Okay, letters dated November 28th, 18 from Mike Burkhart to my husband and I. Town of Waukesha Chairman John Marek does not agree with my assessment of your property I did on 10/17/18. Therefore, Mr. Marek has directed me to write an official notice to cut for your property. Please read completely. That was the gist of it. My husband and I are here to ask the town board to uphold the original finding of the weed commissioner that our property was not in violation of the weed ordinance and that the complaint was invalid. We're the second owner of our home. It was built in 1992 by the owners of Nature's Nook, a full-service landscaping company and garden center. The original and current landscaping on our property was professionally done by Nature's Nook, and the 1.24 acres is a tasteful blend of mowed turf and woodland prairie mixed natural landscaping, as you can see in the pictures. It is intentional and it is not the result of neglect or laziness. We have maintained the original landscaping and invested significant amounts of time and money and have added over 50 trees since 2009. Desirable wildlife, birds, and important pollinators frequent our property and they are important to us. One of our hobbies is watching and photographing nature. Our landscaping and natural setting gets regular compliments from visitors and is an asset to our property. And it's one of the main reasons we purchased it 10 years ago. It's a gem of a property. We have even had to put a private drive sign up at the end of our driveway because people pull in and they think it's a park. Our lot is a certified wildlife habitat by the National Wildlife Federation, and it reflects our values and commitment to nature and to the earth. We utilize the mentoring services of Wild Ones in healing the earth 1 yard at a time, and will proudly display both of their signs soon to help promote this mission and spread awareness. One of the signs is by Wild Ones. It says, "Native plants, natural landscapes, toward harmony with nature, wildones.org." And I also presented to you our certificate that we're a wildlife habitat by the National Wildlife Federation. We have to meet certain criteria to have this. We are part of an effort to restore the natural habitat for the benefit of pollinators and wildlife. Our lot is free of potentially harmful pesticides and herbicides that can pollute both surface waters and groundwater. We have no noxious weeds, and that is not even the issue of the complaint. We have no noxious weeds, and if and when we come across any weeds, we remove them, noxious or not. Our native landscaping reduces rainwater and snow melt runoff, and reduces drainage problems. Our landscape works with nature, not against it. A case could be made that our community would be better served by regulating the use of toxic lawn care chemicals on public and private landscapes rather than restricting residents' freedom of choice to create healthy, sustainable, and ecologically sound non-lawn landscapes.
Ma'am, now I'm going to ask you to stick to the point. The point is to try to convince the board that you have a nuisance, not politic on how you think we should regulate chemicals. Your job tonight is a public hearing to have them determine whether or not your land is a public nuisance or not. And I think we have a right to at least limit it to that issue.
Okay, well, I'll try to proceed as best I can here. Let me know if you're having a problem with it. It should be noted that the new fire department in the town of Waukesha, by design, utilizes natural landscaping, specifically to save the government money by reducing maintenance costs, and even the Waukesha County land next to the administrative office by the courthouse also has natural landscaping on the south side of the road for the same reasons. Both of these natural landscapes are intentional, as is the natural landscape on our property. I'd like to now present 2 letters from many neighbors that approve of our landscaping and find it to be both attractive and non-threatening to their landscapes. They're very brief. One letter, I'd like to enter it into the town, both into the town record. It's from Kevin Campbell, and you can see his home in some of the pictures. It's labeled. And he lives at West 238, South 4999 Big Bend Road. And he says to the town, "I have lived next door on a 1.24 acre lot to the immediate south of Kelli and Spiro Villas since 2010. Their lot is to my north and runs the entire length of my lot. Their lot is a wooded lot with many trees and shrubs and natural landscaping. I'm writing to you to advise you that I have never had an issue with their property and feel they maintain it well. They have no noxious weeds or uncut grass and spend a great deal of time and money taking care of their lot naturally. They keep their lawn and ditch mowed well. Their natural landscaping, prairie garden, and tree and shrub mix blends in well with the raw land that surrounds their lot to the west, the north, and the east, and provides important habitat, sustainable food for pollinators, birds, and wildlife. Their lot is very attractive and does not adversely affect anyone's property value, health, and is certainly not a fire or safety hazard in any way. The second letter is from Brian and Shannon Coleman. They live at South 48 West 23555 Merlin Lane. They say, to the town, I drive past the Villis residence on a regular basis and live around the corner in the neighborhood. I had always admired their property, and this fall I stopped there. It is a beautiful lot and it is well maintained. The Villis family really care about the environment, wildlife, and pollinators, and they work hard to take care of their property. Their lot is a mix of woodland and prairie and mowed grass and is well taken care of. They are surrounded by undeveloped land. Their ditch area is always mowed and clean. There's no litter on their lot. I wish we had a lot that looked like theirs. This property does not warrant a cut notice or any criticism. The town allows others to have ornamental grasses, but is not allowing natural prairie grass and native and natural landscaping. There are so many benefits to native natural landscaping, it would behoove the town to utilize it more. Prairie landscaping is allowed on town property, like the new fire department, yet the town wants to penalize homeowners from doing the same. The Villis property is not causing anyone a problem. It has been landscaped to incorporate natural landscaping and conventional mowed grass for almost 30 years. It looks beautiful and it should be allowed to continue as is. I also have a letter that was written by, it was provided to the town already. It was written by Mr. Neil DeBall, president of Prairie Nursery in Westfield, Wisconsin. And he sent it to all the board members on December 6th. I'd like to read that and enter that into the town record. He says, gentlemen of the board, it has been brought to my attention that a resident of the town of Waukesha, Kelli Villis, residing at West 238, South 4979 Big Bend Road, has been cited as being in violation of the town of Waukesha weed ordinance following a single complaint from a neighbor with whom relations have been strained in the past years. It appears that the town board chairman has overruled the decision by the town weed commissioner that there was no violation of the weed ordinance, and therefore no action or penalty should be imposed upon Mrs. Villis by the town. The above circumstances notwithstanding, I'm contacting you regarding both the letter and the spirit of the law that the town chairman is enforcing against Mrs. Villis. There are three primary issues I'd like to bring to your attention regarding this matter: legal precedent, selective enforcement, and environmental health. Legal precedent. There have been numerous attempts to enforce weed laws against private landowners with native landscapes over the past 30 years. These laws typically impose a height limitation on herbaceous plant material, usually with regard to an aesthetic or ecological value of plant material. These laws were enacted to protect other residents from irresponsible or absentee landowners who failed to maintain their lawns and allowed them to grow up to tall grasses and weeds. However, these laws did not take into account that some people prefer to have an alternative landscape other than a mowed lawn. We have both. In case after case, restrictive weed lawns that did not allow for personal choice in landscape have been ruled as unconstitutional and restricting the freedoms of landowners. These laws have in some cases been enforced arbitrarily and without regard for the validity and value of the landscape design and plant material. Many communities have revised their weed ordinances to reflect an individual's right to have a non-lawn landscape, provided that it meets certain requirements and does not harbor noxious weeds or otherwise have the potential to harm their neighbors' landscapes. I have included our Village of Westfield's weed ordinance, revised in 2012, that provides for native prairie and woodland landscapes for those landowners who prefer diverse plantings that provide both landscape beauty and high-quality habitat for birds, butterflies, and pollinators. The ordinance provides specific guidelines to protect both the owner of the alternative landscape and for neighboring property owners. I hope this provides you with a model for consideration of expanding the options for private landowners in the town of Waukesha to have freedom to plant what they want on their property without undue government intrusion into their private matters. Selective enforcement. It is my understanding that the town of Waukesha only enforces the town's weed ordinance when a complaint is registered by one town resident against another. This would appear to be a reasonable policy from the standpoint of minimizing workload for the town, avoiding litigation costs, and keeping the peace in the community. However, if a law is only applied based on individual complaints, the resulting selective enforcement could be considered arbitrary and capricious. This could potentially expose the town board to lawsuits alleging that specific individuals have been singled out based only upon one complaint, whether said complaint has merit or not. This opens the town up to charges of selective enforcement of the law, particularly when complaints have been filed by feuding neighbors, as appears to be the case in this particular instance. Environmental health. The primary goals of most weed ordinances is to prevent the proliferation of invasive weeds.
Ma'am, I'm gonna cut you off. This has nothing to do with whether or not there's a public nuisance on your property whatsoever. So any judge would say at this point of a due process hearing, you have to go to the issue at hand. And we've let you have great leeway here, as any judge would. But the question before the board is whether your property is a nuisance, not whether Prairie Nature believes that, you know, any of the stuff. And you've got 2 more pages there. They have it in front of you. I see no purpose for having you read it unless it has to do with whether or not your property is a nuisance.
I think it does.
That's the purpose for us to be here tonight.
I think it does. This next section talks about sources
I don't know what
of
the next two,
pollen.
but the first two had nothing to do with whether your property is a nuisance as to whether he convinced his town to pass a different ordinance.
He's providing an example to follow.
Ma'am, that has nothing to do with what your property, tell us why your property should be found not to be a nuisance.
Well, if I could be allowed to continue, because the
I'm
code.
gonna stop you again if it has nothing to do with your land and the public nuisance, but go ahead.
Okay. Studies have shown that the 3 primary causes of hay fever are pollen from oak trees, ragweed, and Kentucky bluegrass.
Do you have those on your property?
We do have some very young oak trees, 3 very young
But
ones.
you just read.
We don't have ragweed and we don't have Kentucky bluegrass.
So that's not material.
But I'm speaking to the state law and the code that.
No, but we're talking about if the owner believes that his or her grasses or weeds are not a nuisance, he or she may request a hearing, and the purpose of the hearing is to determine whether or not your property is a public nuisance.
And I'm trying to get to the point that what we have growing on our property is not a nuisance, because it's not a pollen contributor, not a significant pollen contributor. It's not a safety or health hazard.
When do you get to what's on your property in detail?
I have already addressed, I've said we have a mix of mowed turf, woodland, prairie, and natural landscaping.
Well, then perhaps we should call for a motion and a vote. If that's what's on the property and you don't believe that it's a nuisance, then I think we should call, I'll ask for a motion.
All right, I have a motion, Mr. Chairman. I move to rescind the cut notice action.
No, the
against-
motion can only be to find that that her property is not a nuisance and direct the town administrator to prepare the appropriate findings of facts, conclusions, law, and decision. That's right out of your ordinance.
I so move.
Thank you.
And a second.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, down on the clerk, the administrator, you'll have to listen to the tape and prepare.